Welcome to week 5 of Cloud for Developers. For this week, we're going to focus on integrating two AWS services together, and those services are S3 and IAM. And specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to get down to the individual object level within S3 and write policies within AWS IAM so that we restrict access to certain resources within S3. Okay, so we're really kind of getting granular with our S3 objects, and we're going to restrict folders to certain groups so that certain groups have permission to read, write to a folder, and other groups do not. Okay, so that's kind of the basis for this week's demo. As far as reading goes, I have a link out to the S3 pricing information. I think I shared that with you last week as well in terms of how S3 is priced, but I just want to make sure that we're aware of that. And then the basis for our demo this week is actually a walkthrough that AWS provides. So AWS provides a bunch of walkthroughs, and I've modified the walkthrough just a little bit, but we're controlling access to a bucket with user policies. So basically the idea is, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit, we're going to create an S3 bucket that has folders, development, finance, and private, and we want to restrict access to certain folders within that bucket. So in order to do that, we're going to create some IAM groups and some policies that will restrict access depending on whether a user is a member of a group or not. Okay, that's the idea of the demo. Okay, so this is the link that actually walks you through the Amazon technical documentation. And then under week 5 watch, there is a screencast that's going to walk you through that demo. So there's the screencast of actually working through that process and creating the AWS policies. And then lastly, for your homework, there's going to be a Lab 5 that's going to be working with S3 in the submission link, as well as a week 5 check-in. Okay, so those things are going to be due next Wednesday before midnight, so the 24th before midnight. And just as a reminder in terms of what you need to accomplish for the week, so this is a traditional week where you have a lab and a check-in, so those two pieces of information will be due next Wednesday before midnight. But additionally, we're now coming up on the project deadline, and this just serves as a reminder that the project deadline is February 25th before midnight. So just as a reminder that your project 1 is going to be due before next Thursday before midnight. Okay, so project 1, the description is here. It's very similar to what the walkthrough is, and then you're going to submit that project. Okay, so this demo and the walkthrough is really what you're handling for the project. So we're finally starting to see the details. You're going to complete the project, turn it in before next Thursday. Okay, and that's really it for week 5. And really the focus of this week is how do we start integrating these services together? One thing I'd like to point out before I kind of step away for the week is for this week we're really focusing on how can we provide what's known as the principle of least privilege to our AWS resources. And what I mean by that is users are given exactly what they need access to, but nothing more. And we're demoing that with IAM. So IAM is where we're going to actually write these policies and set these permissions against the S3 service. And I would say that what we're doing in this demo, this walkthrough, is considered a best practice. We're incorporating the principle of least privilege and restricting access to these S3 buckets and folders. Okay, so we're doing a great job this week. What I would say is that going forward with the class, and you'll see kind of the burden of securing these resources and how granular we're getting with permissions. So it kind of creates a burden that's a very useful tool. It's a very necessary tool, but I also feel like it gets in the way of our learning if we're going to focus on securing every single service within AWS. So kind of going forward, what I'm going to say is that for permissions usually what we're going to do is for a given service, we'll grant administrator level privileges. And obviously the idea there would be that we don't want to grant administrator level privileges to a service. We'd want to fine tune that process, and we'd fine tune that process like we're doing with S3, but time probably will not permit us to do that kind of going forward with each service that we're going to touch on within AWS. Okay, so what we're doing this week is kind of a best practice. This is the way we should do it. This is if we're looking for coding standards or administration standards, this week is kind of our goal. Going forward, we'll not live up to those expectations, just as kind of an effort to progress through the course and to see the services and kind of get an introduction to all of those services without having to worry about permissions. Okay, so that's kind of the plan for going forward, knowing that maybe it's not an ideal situation. If I had unlimited time, we could certainly go further with permissions, and we probably should go further with permissions, but that's just kind of the gist of how the course is going to lay out. Okay, so again, week 5, you got the check-in, the lab, and the project all coming due next week. So I'll see you next week.